Regardless of the crime committed, it is imperative that the due process is observed. It is common to hear an arresting officer recite your rights after an arrest. These rights are referred to as Miranda warnings. They serve as a reminder to arrested persons of their rights under the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. In this Liber-Tea episode, we will be discussing the effect of the celebrated case of Miranda versus the state of Arizona, 1966, on the criminal justice system. If you enjoy true crime, please visit our sister channel, Crime Labs, here. The exclusionary rule forbids the prosecution from relying on most of the evidence that has been acquired via unconstitutional means. It is in order to state that inaccurate criminal proceedings and sentencing cause tremendous miscarriages of justice and are a pervasive phenomenon in the U.S. Why are constitutional breaches fatal to criminal proceedings? The defendant, Ernesto Miranda, confessed to the kidnapping and rape of an 18-year-old woman. Before confessing, the Phoenix Police Department failed to notify the suspect of his right to counsel, his right to remain silent, and that anything he said could be used against him in court. After 2 hours of intensive interrogations, Miranda signed a confession to the charges preferred against him. At trial, the prosecution adduced Miranda's confession as evidence, and despite his lawyer objecting, the trial court admitted the evidence. Consequently, Miranda was found guilty of kidnapping and rape and was sentenced to serve 20 to 30 years for each charge. Aggrieved by the sentence, Miranda's lawyer, Alvin Moore, filed an appeal with the Arizona Supreme Court. The appeal stated, among other things, that Miranda's confession was involuntary and that the trial court had erred in admitting it as evidence. The Arizona Supreme Court upheld the trial court's findings, and in its ruling, it argued that the defendant had failed to request a lawyer during the interrogations. Unsatisfied by the Arizona Supreme Court ruling, the matter was presented to the U.S. Supreme Court in 1966 for further deliberation. In June 1966, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of Miranda. The court overturned his conviction and ordered a retrial. The Supreme Court held that the coercive character of custodial interrogations were fatal to any confessions extracted therein. Confessions extracted under such circumstances were inadmissible pursuant to the self-incrimination clause of the Fifth Amendment and the right to an attorney clause of the Sixth Amendment. The only time that these rights could be waived is when a suspect is notified of them and waives them. During the retrial, the prosecution did not use the confession. It adduced other evidence and summoned witnesses. One of the witnesses, Twyla Hoffman, who lived with the defendant at the time of the crime, submitted that the defendant had confessed to her that he had perpetrated the crime. In 1967, Miranda was convicted and was sentenced to serve 20 to 30 years for kidnapping and rape. The Arizona Appellate Court affirmed the trial court's ruling, while the U.S. Supreme Court refused to review the matter. In 1972, Miranda was paroled, and before being stabbed to death in 1976, he made a living autographing Miranda cards. Miranda's suspected killer was arrested but later released due to insufficient evidence. Following the Miranda decision, police officers were required to inform suspects of their rights before commencing interrogations. Since the suspect must confirm whether they understand the Miranda warning, subsequent courts have ruled that police officers must ensure that a waiver of rights is voluntary, knowing, and intelligent. Towards these ends, many police departments printed forms containing Miranda rights, which suspects were required to read, understand, sign, and date before starting interrogations. Several subsequent court decisions tried to undermine the Miranda decision. These decisions appear to provide exceptions to the Miranda standards. In Harris v. New York, 1971, the court held that a confession in breach of the Miranda standards was permissible to impeach an accused person's testimony. In Colorado v. Connolly, 1986, the court held that the words voluntary, intelligent, and knowing mean that the suspect appears to be understanding the process and that they are not being forced to sign the waiver. In addition, It is immaterial whether the suspect at the time is mentally or cognitively challenged. Before the Miranda Court, police officers did not have proper guidelines regarding how to conduct interrogations. Police officers could interrogate suspects for hours until they confessed to a crime. Due to this coercive nature of interrogations, many false confessions occurred, leading to many wrongful convictions. By establishing the Miranda standards, the U.S. Supreme Court helped to secure the rights of arrested persons per the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. When the ruling was made, many law enforcement officers believed that Miranda rights would enable suspects to exonerate themselves from their crimes by remaining silent. President Nixon and some members of the bench attacked the Miranda decision by claiming that Miranda rights did not flow from the Constitution. Over time, people changed their tones regarding Miranda warnings, as it was clear that they did not curtail confessions. They operated as indications of police professionalism. The constitutional status of the Miranda ruling continues to be controversial. In protest of the ruling, Congress in 1968 attempted to enact a statute with provisions setting aside Miranda. The statute was not implemented because it invited numerous constitutional doubts. However, over the years, the Supreme Court created exceptions to Miranda standards, describing them as prophylactic and that they are not guaranteed under the Constitution. In 2000, Miranda was strongly challenged by Dickerson versus the United States, which tested the validity of Congress's decision to overrule it via Code 18 U.S. Code, Section 3501, Admissibility of Confessions. The issue was whether Miranda rights sprung from the Constitution or were simply matters of judicial policy. Speaking through Chief Justice Rehnquist, one of the judges who objected the Miranda court ruling, the court held that Miranda rights had become parts of the U.S. national culture. However, those who dissented categorically stated that violations of Miranda standards did not amount to constitutional violations. Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you have enjoyed and learned something new. Like, share, and subscribe to Liber-Tea for more.